Hey folks, Jamie Lundell here. I want to talk to you today about making crushed W's and C's in steel. So what that looks like, that all comes, there are two different ways that you can develop this. Um, and we're going to discuss that as we move forward here. Again, we're going to go to the whiteboard today and look at some quick sketches on how these different patterns can be developed. And a lot of this turns into what you can do is a basis for developing a lot more intricate and dynamic patterns other than just a flat laminate. So let's go to the whiteboard and check it out. All right, so what we have here is just a quick couple of sketches. They're showing that, once you have that layer count, whichever it's going to be, if you're thinking last to the video that we posted last about this stuff, you decide how dense you want this layer and how many lines you want it to have, right? And by forging in these corners, you take these what were straight bars and kink them over, right? So now you are basically kicking something that was on this face over to this face here. And then once you forge that down, and this can be as intense as you want it to be, you can drop this line way down here, and that's going to put more of this material up on the top. A really important concept to keep in mind, and it falls a bit into this because it'll dictate how much of this kind of material you have up on this corner is gonna really depend on how much you push here. And the real important concept is that when you're designing your pattern, when you think about what your edges are and how many surfaces, what material you want on the edges of your tile, the amount, like if you want like 50% of it to be covered with dark material, it needs to start out with that. And that's never going to change unless you grind it, right? If you have half of it as dark and half of it as light, or, if you just had this line, if you want this line to wrap around, that material already has to be here. If that makes sense. I might be just kind of going on a rant here, but the material, is we'll see this more when we start getting into the to biasing. That really is more of a factor in that. But basically, for the purposes of this, the intensity at which this comes around is going to depend on how far back you knock this material, right? So if you drop this line down to here and then you continue to forge that down, you can see I've come down just a little bit, and I have just a little bit of extra that extends out here. And this can become more intense the more that you push this line up and push this material to this face. And so that's where this, the important thing to keep in mind in this manipulation is that really it's just how many, how much you are pushing material that is on the side over to the top or the bottom of the top, whichever, right? So that's the thing to keep in mind. And if you're turning this into crushed W's, once you do this, you forge it down into this, and then you stack that, right? And so the number of squiggles, you have your choice of line density, right? Which is what we have here. And then you have your choice of how many iterations of the squiggles you get. And that's going to be dependent on how many stacks that you make of this, or I guess it would be of this right here. So those are things to keep in mind when you're developing that pattern. Do you want really intense lines back and forth? Do you want some like it to be more lazy back and forth? And that's how you make those decisions, is by how many iterations of these you stack up. And then obviously the number of lines will be the number of layers that you put in the beginning. The other thing about making a pattern like this is that if you just take your bar that is, let's see if I can get this to right. If you just take your bar that is your straight layers and it is taller than it is wide, and you have your lines vertical, when you forge it down, if you forge it down intensely, you will also get this, because your lines will pooch out the side, right? Your sides will pooch out like we talked about it last time when you're creating that hourglass shape by stacking so many pieces up. If you take this and you forge it down, these sides pooch out, and now you achieve material from here kind of coming out onto this side, and then if you continue to forge that down, this material that that pooches out to the side, some of that gets incorporated into the top, and that will then give you this kind of effect as well. The one thing about pushing the corners in is it gives you a sharper corner, right? So this will come out to be a bit more pointy than if you just do it this way. This will be much more gentle and more of a, I guess, more of a C than a W. So those are the two ways that you can start creating shapes and distorting your lines from being straight to being curved. And that's the kind of basis of that. So one thing that we can think about moving forward with that, and then combining this back to our previous conversation about deciding your layer count, is that there's nothing to say that if you have a dark layer and a bright layer, you can't make a layer of C's, or this initial crush for your W's, and put that between, and now you have those. Now you start to get lines that are not only going straight across from your straight laminate, but if you take a bar that has been a C and you put that in the middle, now those lines are going back and forth. You have like teeth that are kind of going to come together in a bar that will be in between. And so that is another way that you can start, that you can manipulate your flat laminate into being more than just flat laminate. So incorporating these, not only the C's and W's, not only into bars of just C's and W's and intense lines back and forth, but also incorporating that into something that had been a flat laminate, and now adding more of more of a dynamic look to the material that you're putting together. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have questions, if you have comments, suggestions, leave them in the comments, and I'll be sure to get to them. And we're going to continue on down this road of creating this dialogue about creating patterns. It's a lot of creating.